trendybeats.com.
Chocolate bar for the young and the old, rich and the poor. Come, hear my story.
So currently, we are live streaming on Facebook, and then we are live streaming on Facebook. So give me about, we should start by 5 minutes time. We should start in 5 minutes time. Our guest speaker, I think, has joined us. So officially we'll start in 5 minutes time so that we have more participants joining us. Our stream on Facebook is Nana Kwejo Dramina. So you get my personal Facebook account, you get the stream from there. We'll share it from there to the Yafo Institute page. And then we are also on YouTube at Yafo Web, directly on YouTube. So we can share in this 5 minutes. And then we are also on YouTube at Yafo Web.
Release the stress, a dark chocolate and a raw cocoa powder. Eat chocolate, stay healthy, go Ghana. Nothing says I love you more than chocolate. Healthy chocolate, Ghana chocolate. Nothing says I love you more than chocolate. Tasty chocolate, Ghana chocolate. Boss.
More music on trendybeats.com. More music on trendybeats.com.
Chocolate bar for the young and the old, rich and the poor. Come, hear my story. 80-70, a grabbing man on a year of glory.
Like I mentioned, our guest speaker is on the call. I've shared the YouTube link in the chat, so we can also further share to people who have not joined it. And then we can check Facebook at Yafo Institute page. We are currently streaming live. I will urge that all participants put off their video so that we'll have put on their video and then mute yourself as well. If you join, you mute yourself. It's very important so that you don't disrupt the presentation in any way.
So we say, buy for yourself and buy some for your baby. Ghana chocolate, make everyday chocolate day. Buy for your and buy some for your baby.
We've not commenced recording yet as well, so kindly take note. We've not commenced. When we commence recording, I'll let you know.
Valentine chocolate penny Aphrodisiac for the men. Oh, really? Share chocolate bar, chocolate drink. I had that with bread, but the hot and a cold. Try to so release the stress. A dark chocolate and a raw cocoa.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Music on trendybeats.com.
Stop sharing the sound. I believe you can no longer hear the sounds anymore, right? Please give me feedback.
Yes, the sound is off. The
sound
music is
off. Okay. Great. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Yafo Institute Policy Dialogue Series for 2024. Today, our topic for discussion is Beyond Slogans, Rethinking Ghana's Agriculture, Reflection on Some Key Policy and the Way Forward, Part 1. We are honored to be joined by our guest speaker, Dr. Haruna Gedo Yakubu. He's an animal scientist specialized in animal nutrition, food safety, and animal product qualification using correlative analytical methods. He obtained his Bachelor of Agriculture degree from the University of Cape Coast with first-class honors. He also continued with Masters in Animal Nutrition and Feed Safety from Capova University, which is now the Hungarian University of Agriculture and Life Science in 2009. And then he obtained his doctorate in animal science from the same university as well in 2023. So he will be our guest speaker. He will be our guest speaker for tonight, this afternoon's discussion. Later, he will be joined by a panelist. So the structure of this dialogue is that we'll have a presentation from Dr. Yakubu, then we'll introduce the panelists, and then we'll take questions from everybody. So let us all be attentive and then listen to this insightful presentation that will be done by Dr. Haruna Gedo. So, Doc.
Thank you, Nana, for the brief introduction.
Okay.
I would like to extend my profound gratitude to the Yafo Institute for giving me this opportunity to engage a wide range of audience around the world. I appreciate the time that all of you are sharing with me here today as I explore the dynamics of agricultural policies in Ghana over 4 decades. The topic, Beyond Slogans, Rethinking Ghana's Agriculture, Reflections on Some Key Policies and the Way Forward. In advance, I would like to apologize to the audience for the academic nature of this presentation. For the purpose of today's dialogue, I will rely heavily on authoritative academic works to make my case. Let me open this section of the presentation by relying on the authoritative works of Lambert 2019. It is all work and happiness on the farms, agricultural development between the blocks in Nkrumah's Ghana, in the Journal of African History, volume 60, issue number 1. Again, I will rely on GN 1969, agricultural development in the Ivory Coast and Ghana, in the Journal of Modern African Studies, volume 7, issue number 4. Ghana's post-colonial agricultural reforms arose from the country's desperate need to diversify exports. Throughout the 1940s, with swelling shoot disease wreaking havoc on cocoa farms, people in the Gold Coast acutely understood the disadvantages of this reliance on cocoa. In 1948, a commission of inquiry was then set out, and it reported that people's critiques of the colony's agricultural policy, including the lack of attention paid to foodstuffs and cash crops other than cocoa, the weakness of agriculture education, and the absence of plans for future development were the main issues. Accordingly, in 1949, the government established the Agricultural Produce Marketing Board to induce farmers to diversify cash crop production. The government also formed the Agricultural Development Corporation, ADC, with an initial budget of £100,000 to encourage the large-scale commercial production of these new crops. The post-war period has been commonly characterized as an era of stagnation in the non-agricultural cocoa sector. But this representation, based on export figures and efficiency calculations, fails to consider farmers' initiatives. Along the Wellston Belt, coconut cultivation expanded threefold, and the crop proved to be beneficial to farmers. In this case, the farmers even named coconut as Sikadua, the money tree. Farmers in the central part of the country were also restoring to banana exports to pre-war levels. In the drier northern belts, rice production increased significantly, and it was hoped that domestic yield could soon eclipse imports of this grain. Farmers in forested areas were showing some interest in planting coffee and oil palm. People had planted rubber during the Second World War, now requesting assistance in funding for buying their crops. Around the country, farmers were actively indicating their desire to produce for the market. However, agricultural growth during the 1950s was generally inadequate to support development goals, especially because few farmers took up commercial food production despite a rising domestic demand for foodstuffs. West Indian development economist Sir William Attah Lewis, who in 1953 had advised the Gold Coast government that it needed to improve foodstuff yield. He lamented in the late 1950s, still stressing that agriculture is the Cinderella of development programs, and therefore the government must consider on developing agriculture. Indeed, by the 1956, the government had allocated less than 2% of development funds to assisting farmers and had failed to create marketing institutions that would incentivize supply of food cultivation. Meanwhile, the ADC had squandered hundreds of thousands of pounds, mostly on the Gonja project in the northern part of Ghana, that was eventually abandoned with negligible results. Nkrumah and the CPP followed Sir Attah Lewis' advice to support farmers while encouraging large-scale private enterprise. The plan was to set that from July 1959 until 1964, an amount of £3,000 will be dedicated to this to run the project. It later increased to £3 million to create demonstration farms, introducing storage and processing facilities, and participating in wholesale food distribution, all under the auspices of the ADC. The ADC, moreover, was also charged with inducing private parties to establish plantations in cooperation with the government. Nkrumah asserted that this was not merely economically crucial, but politically so. Maintaining Ghana's independence will require continued expansion and diversification of our agriculture, on which in the final analysis, all our plans will depend. In 1962, the government wholly recognized the Ministry of Agriculture. It liquidated the ADC and incorporated the State Farms Corporation, which took over the country's existing agriculture institutions, demonstration farms, and few plantations. During the 5-year development period, from 1961 until Nkrumah was overthrown in the early 1966, development emphasis was on state farms and factories. 125 of the former were established by the State Farm Corporation, 84 by the Workers' Brigade, and Young Farmers League, then 870 by the cooperatives. In the Second Republic, Buzier's government-led Eastern Region Cocoa Project in the 1970s remains one of the ambitious cocoa rehabilitation programs in the country. This was the base on which the Ashanti Region Cocoa Project was done in the 1980s. The project involves the on-lending of about $8.5 million, equivalent by what the World Bank has stated through the Agricultural Development Bank, for the rehabilitation of 51,000 acres of standing cocoa and the replanting of 36,000 acres with high-yielding varieties. All project farmers will be members of the marketing cooperatives, through which loan repayment will be secured. The project will also provide an improved cocoa extension service, farmer training, feeder road development, and the establishment of 15 cocoa marketing cooperatives. Busia Rural Agriculture Development Policy prepared the grounds for the successful implementation of the popular Operation Feed Yourself by the General Kutu Achampon's led government. This policy was initiated in February 1972 and remained until the end of Achampon's regime in 1978. The problem of food shortages grew so pervasive and so grave in Ghana that the military leaders who overthrew the democratic government of Dr. Buzia in 1972 quickly instituted this ambitious program of national self-reliance based on increased food production. In its 5-year development plan, the government projected an annual economic growth rate of 6% in the agriculture sector. Considering that between 1969 and 1972, the rate of growth for Ghanaian agriculture was only about 2.6%. The 6% target was indeed ambitious and will require Herculean effort. No doubt that the first 2.5 years of the program achieved significant production outcomes, with a lot of families becoming food self-sufficient. Regrettably, by the mid-1974 to 1975, Operation Feed Yourself became what many call a falter. Signs of failure included general public discontent, a reduction in target acreage planted, domestic food products were still expensive, and the expansion of Ghana's budget deficit from 190 million cedis in 1972 to 807 million cedis in 1977. The difficulties of the Achampon government with regards to increasing prices of domestic food products, and in some instances, shortages of these products, were one of the reasons why his government was truncated by SMC2, the Supreme Military Council II, led by General Akufo. To reflect on the Third Republic, that is the Third Republican agriculture policy in Ghana, led by Dr. Hila Liman, I will fall on an article written by Attorney Obin, Ghana in Retrospect, Part 11, Ghana under Hila Liman, September 24, 1979 to December 31, 1981. In his inaugural lecture, Dr. Liman stated, and I quote, "Agriculture will be our first priority now and in the foreseeable future. It is unacceptable that the country which abounds in arable land should import food or else go hungry," unquote. A 2-year agriculture program was thus launched. Farmers were given incentives in the form of fair producer prices and, where necessary, machinery and expertise. The government also undertook to encourage the development of local cottage industries, hoping that they will eventually counteract the trend towards capital-intensive import substitution crops. And to show its continued commitment towards the sector, the 1981-82 budget made available a total of 283.6 million cedis. Out of this amount, the Ministry of Agriculture and its departments were allocated 217.2 million cedis. The Irrigation Development Authority received 43.12 million cedis to cover land development in areas surrounding existing irrigation schemes like Via and Tano. The Cotton and Bass Fiber Development Board were given 7 million cedis and 55 million cedis respectively for the importation of fertilizers. On crop development, an amount of 86 million cedis was embarked, whilst the cocoa sector had 33.9 million cedis. So you can see the budget distribution in the Second Republic in the Liman era for agriculture development. Dr. Liman's 2-year agriculture development plan was truncated on the 31st December 1981 by the so-called 31st December Revolution, led by Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, under the Provisional National Defense Council, PNDC. Discussing the PNDC agriculture reforms, I rely on my own article, eulogizing late President Jerry John Rawlings, a focus on the first major agriculture policy under PNDC, Ghana Agriculture Sector Rehabilitation Program, the ASRP, from 1987 to 1993. In response to the worsening macroeconomic imbalances and living conditions, the government of Ghana initiated an economic recovery program, ERP, in 1983. Following the success of ERP in its first phase of implementation, that is between 1983 to 1986, the government of Ghana focused on sector-specific reforms This saw the birth of Agriculture Sector Rehabilitation Program, the ASRP, from 1987 to 1993, as I earlier stated, to complement the stabilization and liberalization policies and rehabilitate the key growth contributors of agriculture. The main objective of the ASRP was to enhance the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agriculture's capacity to provide effective policy and institutional support for rehabilitation and recovery of agriculture production and productivity, and thereby contribute to overall economic growth, food intake of the population, and reduce poverty. The specific objectives were: 1, to provide foreign exchange to finance imported inputs; 2, build technical and managerial capacity within the Ministry of Food and Agriculture; 3, streamline and rationalize agricultural research and extension; 4, pilot test low-cost farmers manage small-scale irrigation schemes; and then 5, privatize input markets, that is fertilizer, tractor hiring services, and veterinary services. Some outcomes of the agriculture sector rehabilitation project or program. The most important policy reform was the destructuralization of MOFA, which started in 1987. The role of MOFA at the national level has since moved towards formulation, implementation, and monitoring of policies, provision of technical assistance to the district, provision of legal and regulatory services, and evaluating impact of policies. According to the African Development Bank, Program Reforms Evaluation Report 2002, that's 2002, on ASRP, agriculture growth saw a reverse downward trend of the 1970s and early 1980s in the years during the first ERP and ASRP. The average agriculture sector grew at annual rate of 2.8% in 1984 to 90, 2.7% in the early 90s, and 4.4% in the second half of the 1990s. The years of recovery and growth in agriculture matched with improved performance in the overall economy. The overall economy, as measured by real GDP, grew at an annual rate of 5.7% between 1983 to 1989, and 4.4% in 1990s. In the fourth Republican agriculture policy, major agriculture policies ruled out by Government of Ghana and her development partners include the Food and Agriculture Sector Development Policy, what is popularly referred to as FASDEP, FASDEP 1 and FASDEP 2. Medium-term Agriculture Sector Investment Plan, METASIP, METASIP 1 and METASIP 2, and the Now Planting for Food and Jobs 1 and 2. The objectives of FASDEP 1 and 2 are captured in the foreword of the FASDEP 2 policy document, which was published in 2007. The first Food and Agriculture Sector Development Policy was developed in 2002 as a framework for the implementation of strategies to modernize agriculture. The strategies in that policy were based on the As Related Agriculture Growth and Development Strategy, 1996, designed to forage links in the value chain. After nearly 4 years of its implementation and a development of subsector policy and strategies to guide the implementation, it became necessary to revise FASDEP 1 to reflect lessons learned and to respond to the changing needs of the sector. This revised policy, referred to as FASDEP 2, emphasized the sustainable utilization of all resources and commercialization of activities in the sector with market-driven growth in mind. It, however, targeted few commodities for food security and income diversification, especially of resource-poor farmers. It enhanced productivity of the commodity value chain through the application of science and technology, with environmental sustainability as emphasis. Between 2011 to 2015, medium-term agriculture sector development plan was developed by MOFA, that is METASIP. The METASIP was developed using a large participatory process and based on FASDEP 2 objectives, with a target for agriculture sector GDP growth of at least 6% annually, and government expenditure allocation of at least 10% of the national budget within the planned period. In 2017, the Planting for Food and Jobs, PFJ model, was officially launched by the current president, His Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, at Gosu on April 19th in the then Brown Harford region. The Investing for Food and Jobs, an agenda for transforming Ghana's agriculture, is the theme that has been developed to operationalize the vision of the government of Ghana, as indicated earlier in the medium-term national development policy framework, which is titled Agenda for Jobs, Creating Prosperity and Equal Opportunity for All from 2018 to 2021. Let's look at the models of planting for food and jobs. One, food crops model, planting for export and rural development as number 2. The greenhouse technology villages, targeting 3 villages at least as model 3. Rearing for food and jobs as model 4. Agricultural Mechanization Services as model 5. What were the objectives? One was to ensure immediate and adequate availability of selected food commodities to provide job opportunities for the teeming unemployed youth in the agriculture and allied sectors, to create general awareness for all formal workers and public institutions to farm and establish backyard gardens, and lastly, to serve as food import substitution. According to statistics by the Ghana Statistical Service, after 3 years of the implementation of the Planting for Food and Jobs program, the sector witnessed a GDP growth rate of about 6.1% in 2017. Yes, it can be argued that this program being launched in 2017 is not solely or cannot be solely the contributor to the 6.1% growth. Nonetheless, we'll give credit to it, and 4.8% in 2018. It is important to mention that significant yield increase were recorded in 2017 for selected crops. For instance, maize yield increased by 67% from 1.8 metric tons per hectare to 3.0 metric tons per hectare. Rice yield increased by 48% from 2.7 metric tons per hectare to 4.0 metric tons per hectare. And soya yield increased by 150% from 1 metric ton per hectare to 2.5 metric tons per hectare. One significant leg of the program was the recruitment of extension agents to propagate the principles of the policy by way of ensuring that farmers understand the scientific basis of farming to increase yield. In 2016, for instance, the extension agent to farm ratio was 1:2,500. That's one extension agent to 2,500 farmers. This has significantly improved over the years to about 1:1,165, with the recruitment of about 2,700 agriculture extension agents and relevant staff by the end of 2018. The major problem with the policy was the inability to create available markets and non-value addition of produce. Fertilizer and input theft characterized the policy, especially at the border zone. And here I would like to just introduce this when the minister was complaining that people smuggle fertilizers on the back of camel to neighboring Togo. The other failure is inability to honor creditors, especially fertilizers and seed suppliers. Organizations that were supplying fertilizer and improved seed had their money locked up for a long time before payment, and they couldn't see the importance of this program, especially to them as suppliers. And the bureaucracy that characterized the distribution of farm inputs. Unfortunately, in Ghana, our politics is truly partisan and polarized. It can be stated with emphasis that the distribution of most of these inputs were based on party lines, and therefore some farmers went through frustration before obtaining some of the inputs. What is the way forward to sustainable agriculture policies? I couldn't agree more with the food and agriculture principle on sustainable agriculture policies. One, that the dividing line between policy design, dissemination, and implementation is not a sharp one. If you want to disseminate a policy accurately, then attaining consensus is good. Effective dissemination is essential for putting new policies into effect. During the dissemination phase, feedback often is received that could result in change to the design of the policies and the strategy itself. Unfortunately, in our part of the world, that is Ghana, when criticism is being issued, we are called naysayers and people who are anti-government. We must listen to intellectuals when these programs are rolled out. No one is a repository of wisdom. The fact that you are in politics doesn't mean that you know all. People sit back to watch and can give you feedback in order to implement policies that are good. Beyond political slogans, what should be done? One, policymakers must develop a medium-term implementation plan, under which ages annual implementation plans will be formulated. We must identify clearly the needed actions in all implementation channels, including assignment of responsibilities and target programs. We must establish an implementation secretariat and/or a high-level committee to manage executions and monitoring of these strategies. And this must be done by professionals and not merely political partisan appointees. To Yafo Institute and all of you joining me today, again, I thank you all for sharing your time with me. I hope that this dialogue will be a beneficial one, and I look forward to your positive and negative feedbacks as we go through this dialogue series. May God bless you all, and I thank you.
Thank you very, very much. That was an amazing presentation from Dr. Haruna Yakubu.
And if you can project the acknowledgement, the references, I'll be very happy.
Okay, then let me do that one quickly. So in the presentation, can you all see my screen? Thank you. First of all, let me do this first. Spotlight. Great. Thank you very much for that. And I'll add that participants should put in their questions on the, submit your question at the chat box. We will respond. I'll read all of them. Okay, good. So I believe we can all see it.
Yes, please.
I must say that today's policy dialogue, we have media partners as part of our policy dialogue series. We have the Sycamine Times and also Rainbow Radio. So I'm sure that their representatives are on this meeting as well. So we give them acknowledgement too. Doc.
Okay. So
are we good with that acknowledgement?
Yeah, I would like to acknowledge these references. They've enriched the intellectual discussions that I went through to prepare this presentation. As I've already done in the presentation, it is only proper to acknowledge it again at the later part of the presentation. Lambert 2019, it is all work and happiness on the farms, agriculture development between Nkrumah's Ghana in the Journal of African History, volume 60, issue number 1. Then Jane, 1969, Agriculture Development in the Ivory Coast and Ghana in the Journal of Modern African Studies, volume 7, issue number 4. Anthony Obin, Ghana in Retrospect, part 11, Ghana under Hilary Mann. So these are the references in my own document. I use this to prepare a lot in my presentation. So I acknowledge their intellectual work.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to end this. Okay, I can see that we already have some hands up for some questions. But as mentioned earlier, we'll take all the questions at the panel discussion section. So at this juncture, we'll be zooming into the panel discussion section. And for the panel discussion, we have a policy scholar from Yafo Institute joining, and we'll also have our guest speaker that will constitute the panel. So the policy scholar from Yafo Institute is in the person of Joshua Lawetete. He's a policy scholar on agriculture at Yafo Institute. He has bachelor in agriculture from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. He's also a farmer with many years of experience on the field. He was also part of the team at the crop unit of the Ministry of Food and Agriculture and Ashanti Region Office, which coordinated the activities for the Planting for Food and Jobs program for 2021-2022 crop season. He's also a policy scholar and contributes immensely to our work here at Yafo Institute. So we moving into the questions, I don't know. Okay, so when I mention your name, then you submit your questions, especially those who have raised their hands. So we have Abdul Rahman. Okay, good. So we have Abdul Rahman. So Abdul Rahman, you can go ahead and then unmute yourself and speak. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Presenter, I didn't quite get your name. In fact,
he's Dr. Haruna Gedo.
No, yeah. you, Doc. Yeah, Doc is my mentor and a very good friend. So yes, I really want to say a very big thank you to Doc. I call him Prof. Yes, for the very enriching and insightful presentation. Okay, I have really learned a lot and continue to learn from Doc. But my question has to do with the presentation and many others that I have listened to regarding agriculture production in Ghana. I have realized that government efforts is always on crop production, okay, marginalizing expenditure or investment in livestock production. Yet you will have government spending huge sums of money importing livestock products into the country. What's the essence of importing livestock products when maybe you could invest those monies into the livestock product in Ghana here? Or is it that we do not have the technical know-how or the ability to produce the livestock? Or we want to also say that Ghana is a vegan state so that we will be able to at least decipher where we stand. Otherwise, I think that that particular sector is much marginalized. Thank you very much.
Okay. Nana, should I take it or you will take more? Maybe let me take this one, then we can. All right. Thank you for joining the section, Mr. Abdurrahman. I appreciate your efforts. It is true that most agricultural policies are mostly focused on crop production. And if you look through agricultural policies worldwide, in Africa, that has been the trend. I agree with you that we are not a vegan state. Population growth is estimated to increase by 2050. Climate change is influencing animal production worldwide. The demand for animal protein is still the same. We need protein for human growth and development. It is therefore important for our policymakers through such discussion or this discussion, the policy dialogue, to carry this message along. As an animal scientist, I also saw the biases when going through the literature to present this paper. So it is a message that we must also take serious, that animal production is good. If you look at even the price hike in animal or livestock products within this period, it is essential for us to increase the production of these species. In developed countries like the Netherlands, the consideration of insects as food has been the focus now. They've utilized most of the cattle species. And now they are even going through looking at which insects can provide us the needed protein as an insect for food. So I agree with you that we must carry this message forward and to influence policymakers in agricultural policy formulation. So I'll take the next question. I can see one in the comment section, Nana, if you can read it. Please unmute. Nana, please unmute.
Okay, we have Joshua, who is also part of the panelists. Joshua, are you there with us?
Yeah.
Joshua. Okay, so
yeah,
I'm reading the next one so that if you have any contribution, you add it, and then Doc also add something.
all
So
right.
this is coming from Akwesi Jemfi. I am particularly happy about the historical development Doc gave regarding government policies. My concern is that how do we how do we strengthen existing agricultural policies to meet the needs of the people? We cannot underestimate the essence of some of the political slogans as they prescribe the party's agenda to achieving agricultural sustainability. So that is the one we have in the comment section. I don't know if I should allow Ahmed to add his so that we take submission from both of you. Ahmed. Ahmed, are you there?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
please, we are listening. So add yours so that
Okay. But okay, I want to say a very big thank you for this opportunity. Thank you so much to Dr. Haruda for the wonderful presentation and the Yafo Institute for this dialogue. And my question is, I will be a little bit biased because of my background as a climate change person and an environmentalist. Well, with all the policies that Dr. has brought out and then we are currently discussing, I find it difficult to look at or to see an integration of climate change in all these policies, looking at the effect or the impact of climate change on our general agricultural outlook. So, currently, if you look at the planting for food and jobs, I am finding it difficult to see where we are actually integrating climate change as a major aspect of it. So, I want to find out from Doc, what is the policy direction for us to be able to integrate climate change as a major policy into our agricultural policies beyond the slogans? Thank you. Nana, you are muted. I think
Nana,
I
you're
cannot hear you.
Hey, sorry about that. I think Ahmed is done, so I'll take submission from Joshua first, and then Doc will finalize it for these two questions that has come.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. And I must say, I will recommend Dr. Agado for the presentation so far. He has elaborated on past policies and then he delved into the current one, which is the planting for food and jobs. And I'll give you a thumbs up for such insightful presentation. Okay, so let me take the one in the chat box by acquisition fee. He said his concern is that how do we strengthen existing agricultural policies to meet the needs of the people? Most of the policies that come are mostly political based and they are used to gain political powers. Looking at the current one that we have, planting for food and jobs like this, it's a good policy that had positive impact on the economy. But though it had loopholes. So looking at this, when you talk about it, this when you give them suggestions that, oh, instead of going it this way, let's do it the other way around, then you'll be tagged with a political lens that, oh, because you are speaking against or you are giving the suggestion that this, let's take it in this direction, you'll be tagged that you are an NDC person. So when this continues, we are not going to have the policies to meet the needs of the people. So as the way forward, let's have an agricultural agenda for the country that, okay, if this party A comes, you are going to continue what party B has started because it is going to meet the needs of the people.
Okay.
Right. I think I don't know if you are getting me.
Yeah, I get you clear. I think even Doc mentioned that as part of the recommendation that we shouldn't politicize issues, that we have people who may be on the standby, but may have some technical knowledge when it comes to the policy. So Doc, this juncture, I'll call you into this so that you wrap up.
To just add up to what Joshua said, it is true that we cannot dissociate politics with economic growth and development. For every government policy, it is motivated by politics. We have the act and science of politics. And therefore, politicians will always want to take advantage of good policies that are achieving results to emphasize during election campaigning. But what we cannot also ignore is that to strengthen agricultural policies, that is answering the question, I will re-emphasize that there is a dividing line between policy design, implementation, and the sharp contrast between the design, dissemination, and implementation. So for dissemination, for instance, when you want to disseminate these agricultural policies, attaining consensus is always good. You must not look at the farmer as the 1900s type of farmer. The farmer is now well developed. They have indigenous knowledge, and we must listen to them. That means we must take feedback from them during the dissemination phase. When we consider this feedback, which often is being received through the agriculture extension agents, report written by the Ministry of Agriculture through the district directors must be considered very efficiently, and policymakers must revise their notes and go ahead to correct what is wrong during the policy cycle. A policy is a life cycle, just like living organisms. And we also, in retrospect, correct a lot of wrong things that we have done, and going to the future, we avoid those mistakes. So this is one of the strategies to consider when strengthening agriculture policies. Now, integration of climate change into our policies. You are right. Now, in the world, climate smart agriculture is the New Deal. We are all talking about how climate change will impact the growth and development of human species and even animals and plants. The river resources or water resources are drying up. Agricultural production will soon be affected. The lands are heating up. Water and evapotable crop transpiration is increasing, and therefore we need more water to irrigate our crops. It is therefore important to always consider looking at climate smart agriculture, taking the temperature of the area into consideration, the rainfall pattern over the years into consideration, and therefore designing models that will improve agricultural production and sustenance. I therefore encourage policymakers to look at what we are signing on to, the climate change summit that we always attend. We must implement them. We shouldn't leave them on paper just because we need funding. We must implement them. So I think Joshua can add up to the climate change issue if he has something to say.
Yeah, but before that, I want to chip in this important question that is in the drop chat box. This is in concern with the LI on import restriction. I don't know whether we followed this LI that has been withdrawn, but I'm sure they are also looking for ways and means to reintroduce this LI. And it says, do you think that the LI on import restriction on some items is key in our agriculture now, or more should be done before it is addressed in Parliament? So that is in regard with the LI that seeks to ban some 22 items in Ghana. And then I'll also chip in this issue where we had a taboo that is going against farming, animal husbandry, which is the issue at Sementia farms, where we had the farm having to close down because there was this taboo in the area where they were operating. They have to relocate. I think they did relocate, but what is that impact on our agriculture as we are developing as a country? Because if we have taboos that is going to hinder this agriculture development, then that is going to be an issue. Then, since climate change is also in the talks, I want us to look at the issue of galamsey and how it's also impacting our agriculture, because like we saw, someone was glad to sell their cocoa farms gladly in replace for money, because the cocoa farmer has become so poor that some cannot even, they said they've not even seen 20,000 Ghana cedis before. And so if that is the situation, and the galamsey people are offering 20,000 to take over the cocoa farm, so they are gladly cutting it down for galamsey activities to take place. So what do you make of this situation now that we are discussing agriculture? Thank you. Ahmed, I will take you after these two submissions from them. Thank you very much.
Okay, I will touch on import restriction first, then maybe Joshua can come in, then I continue. I don't want it to be a monologue. I want him to also come in, then it will be like a dialogue. So with import restriction, it is always important to state, and I will continue to emphasize, that importation is not that bad. But what you import as a country is always under your consideration. So if you can produce, for instance, maize to supply all your citizens and also have surplus, and you go ahead to import maize, then you will have a problem. But if you don't have that capacity to produce a certain food crop and you are importing, then it is not a bad idea. With import restriction, we must have a phase of implementation that we encrypt, like we select big base farmers or commercial enterprises that we do a stimulation model to see, for instance, 2-5 years, the amount of metric tons they can produce in the country. If it is sustainable, then we can go ahead to place restriction on that product. But without a stimulation model and without any piloting, if you go ahead to do the restriction, you will come back eating your own ways. So with import restriction, it's always important to look at where we have strength. I've had a look at the bill, though it has been withdrawn for now. But if we have the necessary capacity, for instance, I saw even on the bill, the banning of offals, what we normally call the intestines of animals. Yes, if we have the capacity to produce, like when Nkrumah was able to establish the big factory, if we have the capacity to produce animals where we will not import from Burkina Faso, Niger, and those areas, it is important to look at this restriction. If we, it's important to re-look at this restriction, but if we have the capacity to produce, then we can go ahead to do a phase restriction on that produce. So it is important to state that we don't just get up as a nation without any stimulation model. I don't know what the Ministry of Trade and Industry has done. I must be fair to them. They are also intellectuals there. Maybe they have the model that they've already done, and they came out with the realization that we'll be able to produce this in order to sustain the lives of our citizens. If that is the case, they must make it known to all of us so that we go ahead with them in this implementation of import restriction. So Joshua, if you have anything to add, you can come in, I come in later on.
Okay, so I'll continue from where you ended about the import restriction. So I happen to be connected to a frozen food company, a frozen meat company in Kumasi. And at the rate at which their imported goods comes in, and I asked this question that if we put restriction on imports, are we ready to meet the demand of the people? Because the rate at which people consume meat is very high, especially the offers of these animals. They import them, and every day you see containers of different containers of trash coming in, and it gets finished. So are we ready to meet the demand of the people? If yes, then we can put the restriction of its imports. And then with the climate, let me quickly touch on the climate. Being having experience in farming, with the experience previously, we were able to get the rainfall patterns. So we knew that, okay, when I plant my rice in, let's say in March, I'm going to meet the rains. But for now, you can't predict the rainfall patterns. It has changed. So with even the planting for food and just that, it had irrigation models in it. But yet the policy was not able to meet up those climate change patterns. So going forward, I think we shouldn't just, political parties shouldn't just bring out policies just for political gain. They should do stakeholder consultations and do piloting of the project and see how and where they could start the project in little by little. But just taking planting for food and just policy as a whole and starting it just on the baseline for the whole country, that's where we face some of these challenges and we are not able to solve the period that the policy is supposed to solve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Joshua. Ahmed, I think come in with your question so that I'll add something to this so that Doc will take it again.
Okay, Nana, thank you so much. I don't know whether it's a question or it's going to be a comment, but let me put it across. I want to start from where Dr. Haruna ended by indicating that a farmer today is have this mentality. I want to find out the way our policies are formulated and implemented. I did not more of a top-down kind of policy approaches where they sit on top there to formulate the policy, we bring it on board, and then everybody runs to the market with it. Shouldn't we look at the policy to be a kind of a bottom-up? Because you are formulating policies for people to receive it. And to ensure the sustainability of these policies, bottom-up approaches is always the best approach to use. In my study, a recent study I did with farmers, you'll be surprised to know that when we are mentioning planting for food and jobs, all that, farmers don't even know. Some farmers don't even know that government such policies are in existence. So at the end of the day, a lot of farmers, over 90% of farmers I contacted indicated that they don't even trust government institutions because they don't even know the kind of policy they're implementing. So if you have policies that are not bottom up or top down, are we sure our policies are going to be sustainable? So this is my question to
Okay.
great.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. Doc, I would like you to look at that and then look at this one also with respect to the LI that you mentioned. Now, you realize in the LI, there's a part that gives power to the minister to approve of certain products that are be restricted before you can import them. Now, when you just oppose it to some of the things that was outlined against the Nkrumah government, there was also restriction on imports, and then there was a system that you are supposed to take import licenses from the government before you are allowed to import. And you see the corruption processes that are we learning from history, or we are just going to make history repeat itself? Because when you trace the root of the people, like you trace the political lineage of the current government, at the time of Nkrumah, they were complaining against import certificates. And today they have power, they are introducing import certificates. And so I don't get the principle there. And if history is something for us to learn with, it was introduced in Ghana and it becomes an accusation against the Nkrumah government. And then this government also bringing that in. So let's look at that quickly with the historical background bit. And then you look at Ahmed's questions as well, the bottom-up approach. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, so I would like to comment on my friend Ahmed's. I think it is a way of contributing to the discussion, not more of a question. But I agree with him that in any policy formulation and implementation, the participatory approach is always important. You must bring on board all key stakeholders in this policy formulation, implementation, and even dissemination. When you look at the participatory approach, you are able to interact with the lower group, that is in lower, not using it derogatory, but just in the chain of activities, the farmers. You learn from them and you incorporate their ideas into the policy formulation. So the active way of formulating policies is always important than passive. Passive in the sense that those at the top just sit down with political objective, create it, and they try to pass it to the farmers. Whether they understand it or not, they must go with it. Even looking at the participatory approach, how often do we train our agriculture extension agents to re-evaluate these policies? And in order to disseminate same to the farmers, we must look at the connections as well. To come to your import restriction question, where powers were given to the minister solely to determine who and what they import. Yes, it is true that in our part of the world, we don't trust politicians. In everywhere in the world, political trust is reducing, but ours is dangerous. The minister, if he's not a good person, just as our constitution has done, giving all powers to the president, if he's not a good person, he may end up treating us as captives of war. After all, they are even ruling us as if they captured us through war and not even through elections. So with the minister, he can be autocratic, and this will even create corruption by producing oligarchs within his chain, within his circles. So he will determine who to import. And we know how party financing is done in this country. So basically that was the kick against that he had, the Ministry of Trade had, in order that people don't trust it, because the opposite side, in parliament. They know what they can do with power. They have been in power before. So they are afraid that if they allow this thing to go through, it will be a disaster. So that's why I say in every policy formulation, consensus is important. If we have trust, then we can move ahead. Lastly, you mentioned something about traditional or taboos, traditional practices that limit agriculture development. It is true that we cannot separate human development from the tradition or the beliefs of people. Everywhere in the world, they exist. So if we have traditional practices or taboo, what we call taboos, in even what we call modern day Ghana, that is hindering agricultural production. The only thing is to come into consensus with the traditional rulers. If it is true and can be proven, even though mostly cannot be proven, that it affects some way, like the rearing of animals affect their development as a people of what they believe. Who are we to challenge their beliefs? Because belief system is integral part of our development. They must always tell the people coming into the community to develop agriculture, their beliefs and taboos, for them to shy away from that. Even some rivers in Ghana, they don't allow animals to drink from those rivers. So if you have your cattle ranch around those areas, you will limit your production. So we cannot dissociate ourselves from this, even though it is unfortunate, but we must always give respect to traditional beliefs in order to stay alive with the system.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll add something to Ahmed's question, but before I go ahead, I'll urge the participants to submit their questions or raise their hands, and then we'll call them. I think Ahmed, your hand is up again. Okay, then I'll call you. But before that, now, when you look at the planting for food and jobs, there was a component which is termed as subsidy that is given to the farmers. And if you recall, Joshua, you made an analysis that the subsidies sometimes find its way to the open market. And so in 2017, the government put 50% of subsidies on it, on inputs. Then this reduced to 38% in the following year, and then now, and later on, to 15%. And then currently, they've canceled it, that they have withdrawn subsidy on input. Now, if it is participatory, like Ahmed suggested, we'll be able to get people to give this, to give them the subsidy so that they enjoy it. But it's like, in practice, the analysis that was done by Joshua at Yafo Institute, is like, in practice, the part is like party food soldiers get hold of the subsidized product, and they are supposed to give it to the farmers, and then they end up selling it to the farmers. And so sometimes farmers feel like what is supposed to be a subsidized cost is even more expensive than when they even go to the open market to make purchase of it. So this practice, was it in most of the agricultural policies, or is it just under food and planting for food and job? But that's what we are seeing currently. Thank you very much.
Okay, Nana, it cannot be associated only with planting for food and jobs. With the literature, when I was going through the literature, with the first phase of Operation Feed Yourself under Achampong, you could see that it was a great success. People were happy producing. But later part, before his overthrow, there was general discontent with the program. Inputs were hijacked by few people in society. And we know even that was a military system. It was through this form of kalabuli that Achampong went ahead to overthrow Buzia. But he came in within the first part of Operation Feed Yourself. Inputs were flowing. The encouragement was there. People were producing. But later part of the program, the general discontent set in. The inputs were not coming. Prices start to rise. And that instigated Akufo to also overthrow Achampong. So it has been there with us. The main issue is with our politics, and I continue to emphasize, and with any policymaker that I meet, if I'm still alive, I will still emphasize that they rule us like captives of war. They don't rule us like people that voted for them. They think that they have power, and anything they want to do, the power belongs to them. And you know, unfortunately, their foot soldiers, as you stated, are more dangerous than them. For those at the top, they use the pen and the paper. For the food soldiers, they come with hunger and aggression. So anything at all, even if I'm a farmer and I'm producing well through the planting for food and jobs, even if I don't believe the political ideology of the party in government, since I'm participating in it and I'm producing, then the food soldiers want me to change my political ideology to follow that of the government and even to advertise for them. That is the dangerous part of even the 1D, 1F. Some factories were not getting that support, but when it was getting to the electioneering campaign of 2020, they put them on their flyers just to make a political point. If you succeed in agricultural policy, for every human being, as Maslow stated, food is a basic need. If you succeed in agricultural policy, it will reflect in the production. People will be satisfied. The food prices in the market will reduce. It will be visible. You don't need any flyer to do a political campaign. If I enter into the market, I will know whether that policy is working or not. And we will not end up bringing plantain to the Ministry of Agriculture to sell.
Hey, that is a very good one. Ahmed, your hand is up. Can you take it up from there?
Yes. I want to find out from Doc and his colleague whether our agricultural policies have sustainability plans attached to them in terms of implementation. Because like Doc gave us or enumerated the historical antecedent of various agricultural policies, I am finding it difficult to be able to see the sustainability plan of all those policies because it's a plan that you are implementing. At the end of the day, somebody will be a recipient of it. What is the sustainability plan of agricultural policies? Maybe 2 or 3, and then we can take it up from there.
Okay. Then, Asamoah Kweku, your hand is also up. Can you also come in with your question? We have about 20 minutes and then we'll close.
Okay. Thank you very much. My question is, can you please hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Asamoah. Continue.
Okay, so I just came across a specific data. And the thing is, looking from 2012 to 2020, our agriculture to GDP was around averagely of 20.37%. But looking at from let me just take COVID-19 from it. So from, let's say, 2020 to 2022, it's around 19.57. So my question is, though we've enrolled PFG, which is Planning for Food and Jobs, so what is it that we are not doing right? Because looking at 2012 to 2016, it was around 20 point something, but from 2020 to 2022, it's around 19.57. Though this has been enrolled and a lot has been invested in it. Thank you.
So I think we spent almost about 2 billion Ghana cedi in just Planting for Food and Jobs so far. So I think I want to add that before the submissions come. Thank you very much.
Joshua, will you come in, or I should go ahead before?
Oh, go there. I come after you.
Okay. All right, Mr. Samoa, it is true that if you look at the agri to GDP, it was higher than what we achieved later part of 2020. Yes, we cannot discount the fact that COVID has impacted our way of life. To answer your question, I will integrate it with Ahmed's submission. Sustainability. It is the word sustainability is our headache. The euphoria, which normally characterize agricultural policy launch, you see that the launch of Planting for Food and Jobs was like a jamboree. But later part of it, what has been the impact? That is the question. So the sustainability plan of these policies is always key to sustaining agricultural growth. So for instance, you implement a program, you don't have a medium-term plan, you don't have a long-term plan, you only have an election period plan. That is an election cycle. And for this, both political parties are guilty because our constitution gives them 4 years to come back to seek our mandate. So if they are implementing the program, as politicians will normally do, and even Nkrumah did this, when Attah Louis advised him to stop the handkerchief farming, when we talk about handkerchief farming, these subsistence farming, small ones, and come to commercial agriculture, he was basically looking at the Egyptian model that Attah Louis gave them, such that it will give an economic power, such that people will see that, yes, Nkrumah is doing well, and they will vote for him. But these agriculture policies don't run in a short period. When you take annual crops, yes, the annual crops can give you a yield within 1 year. But with the cash crops, something like oil palm, something like cocoa, something like rubber, you need a long-term plan to implement this. Something like citrus, what people call orange, is citrus. So something like citrus, the development of citrus and the agriculture value chain production doesn't do well within 4 years. So we must have sustainability plan. We must have a medium plan. Then we must have frequent reviews. And these reviews must incorporate the feedback from farmers and also policy makers. But I understand it will be difficult with the type of politics we play in this country. We want to see the results, and therefore we emphasize more on the annual crops. What has been the maize yield for the year? What has been the soya bean yield for the year? We do this, but we don't look at the general outlook for a long term. So yes, we will suffer more of this. It is even sad that across Africa, just yesterday I was reading that Russia has released grains in order to sustain us. If not, hunger may worry us. Is it not a shame that we have our 60% of our arable lands there for us to farm, but policymakers are failing us? So sustainability is key. So with this, Ahmed and Asamoah, I think I've integrated your comments.
Joshua, a quick one from you, and then we take more.
All right, sure. So let me hit on the sustainability plan of the agricultural policies. You know, our agricultural policies are mostly political, as Dr. just said. And looking at all the policies, they were just for political gains to win powers. So in my analysis on the Planting for Food and Jobs, I made a statement that between the farmer and the government, who is more having the farm at heart? Definitely, it is the farmer who is having his farm at heart. So if he is to buy fertilizers, improve seeds, it is the farmer that will be willing to get all those stuff at the right time for the betterment of the farm. But if we politicize it, I'll give you subsidized fertilizers, and even the fertilizers don't come at the right time. At the time that maybe your maize have grown already, what will be the use of the fertilizer to your maize farm? So let's look at all these policies that are coming and have a better policy that will benefit the farmer.
Okay, so
okay. The way forward, I think we shouldn't be doing the government that account shouldn't be doing the free things. I think in my point of view, when taxes on those inputs are reduced, the farmers will be willing to buy them at the open market price. Looking at these fertilizers, for instance, even the fertilizers that were supposed to go to the farmers on the subsidized price were not going to the farmers. After the distributors receive the fertilizers in the PFG sacks, and then the monetary team goes to inspect them. When they are left, some of them play very smart. They rebag these fertilizers in the open market sacks, and they sell it at a higher cost. So these policies are enriching the few, and then the farmers who are supposed to benefit from these policies are not getting the right benefits. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think so. From what Joshua is saying, if the taxes should leave, or if the government should reduce the taxes, then farmers will be able to afford some of these inputs by themselves directly. A quick one, then I take Ahmed. Our agricultural value chain, it looks like we focus so much on growing the crop, but we do not add value to the crops, and so making it difficult for them to be transported. So if you have, let's say, a whole harvest of yam, it becomes so bulky to transport yam from the farmlands to the markets. But along that value chain, we don't have any industrial plan to kind of reduce it to maybe an end product use that is close to the farmland. So we have post-harvest losses, and that has always gone on, and our farmers keep remaining poor. I look at them, apart from those who run the cooperative that are able to afford tractors and whatnot, majority of them are not able to afford basic things. And when I see Farmers Day, an award presented to farmer, and they include even cutlass. And some of these things are, so the farmer cannot even have some of these items for himself in all the years of cocoa farming. You cannot purchase a saloon car, a tractor, and what. So what is the fruits that is being enjoyed by the farmer? And again, we did another article on the analysis on the inflation and cocoa price increment, and that the government being the sole purchaser of cocoa beans, once they increase the price, everybody is trying to look at, oh, it has increased from 800 to 1,300, but nobody is looking at the purchasing power of 1,300 currently as in the economy that we are living in. And so these are some of the things that I want to bring to our attention, that why are we doing the same farming and then we are remaining poor, and the farmers' condition is keep derogating, so they are not becoming rich, and there's also no industrial value chain leading to post-harvest losses. So kindly note it down. I'll come back to you. Ahmed, is there a contribution or a question? Ahmed, the floor is yours.
It's a contribution, but my people can look at it and then maybe give their own feedback on it. I want to give a practical instance where a particular policy has worked from the non-governmental organization aspect of view. There is a policy, or there's a project currently ongoing that I'm actually part of it in a way, that has taken the aspect of free out. And then the policy is working with rural women groups who are supposed to have access to agricultural input technologies at a discounted price of 50%. So input like seeds, post-harvest technologies like Moto King, shellers are given to these women at 50% discounted price. And you won't believe it, that about 180,000 Canadian dollars was earmarked for this project. And then these women were able to make out or to cough up this amount of money to match the 50% that is coming from the project. So imagine what is coming from our women. And then so that particular policy has been able to take away the I don't care policy of which is free. Fertilizer is coming at free price. Everything is free. So you give the farmer, the farmer doesn't even care whether there was yield or not. The fellow doesn't care because it is free. But with this particular 50% discount policy, the farmer pays 50%. For example, seed for an acre is 500 Ghana cedis. The farmer pays 250 cedis. The project pays 250 cedis. And then the farmers were so interested in this particular policy at the center. Whatever we're bringing, we're not even reaching the farmers. So I think such a policy where a farmer will bring out his or her sweat onto the project, and then the government also come out with their sweat, then they match it as well, matching grant 50-50. I think it's a policy that can actually push our farmers to take up agriculture and then push government to be able to help our farmers improve in terms of yields in our agricultural system. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Before I give it to the panelists to engage, I think, Ahmed, with this one, it falls in line with Yafo Institute because we are a free marketers and we always campaign on that regard. I'm sure Doc is aware of it already. So once the free is being taken out, we are glad to hear that once free is out, people are being more effective because nobody cares for anything than what belongs to them. So once they are able to make purchase, then indeed they will care for it. So Doc, I invite you to answer one or two things.
If you want more information about this after this, maybe we can still talk more.
Sure. Kindly send your email in the chat box and then we'll engage you.
Contact Dr. Gado and Dr. Harry will be able to help.
Okay, my friend Ahmed, I don't doubt your capacity when it comes to community development, and I'm always proud of you. Nana, value addition. It is amazing. The first time when I learned that since 1911, Ghana has been on the global map of cocoa production until the swollen shoe disease wreaked havoc on us and Cote d'Ivoire took over. But what has been our plan? Always producing. Cocoa board will buy, sell to the market, then we go for syndicated loan. That has been our model. And it is even painful that for the past 5 years, all that cocoa board does is to record losses. It is important to also state that countries like Switzerland, it is amazing. The nearest cocoa tree to Switzerland is found in Ghana. They don't have cocoa tree. But Switzerland market is one of the lead markets in terms of cocoa chocolate production. Belgium, the same. What is it that we cannot do? It is about technology, driving technology and agriculture value addition. I suggest that there must be an interministerial policy on how to integrate agriculture with technology. So for instance, developing this policy, there must be the cooperation of, for instance, the Ministry of Science and Technology, there must be the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Trade. All these four ministries can come out with a strong policy document that will support value addition. Because with agriculture, the Agriculture Ministry, now all that they do is to produce. So we produce, we sell to the market, people eat it, and that is it. The value addition comes when the Ministry of Science and Technology takes advantage of what the Agriculture Ministry produces. With financing, it is also important to note that the Agriculture Development Bank was purposely brought out to support these our farmers. But ask yourself today, if I even motivate my farmers from Pembi, where I always state I'm proud to be a son of, to come to Agriculture Development Bank, even with 10 acres of land, will they have finances from the Agriculture Development Bank to produce? I don't think so. What has gone wrong? We must look at what has really gone wrong. We can adjust our chain, that is the production chain and the value addition, by having this interministerial policy. And it must not be just political. It must be a commitment-based policy that will drive agriculture. We can do it. People are in Ghana here, even outside the country, who have expertise, very intelligent people. I have been to conferences, and I can proudly tell you that there are smart people coming from Ghana. Unfortunately, the climate is so hostile. If you don't join the political terrain, you are seen as a naysayer and just blowing hot air. Very unfortunate, but what can we do?
Yes, very unfortunate. So every dissent, we live in a country where every dissenting view is regarded as opposition. And what you are bringing on board is very laudable, and I'll urge the journalists that they should continue to be our accountability eye, because interministerial committees, the last one on Galamsey, we know we all saw where it ended. So continue to be our accountability eye, because those in government in our part of the world, we cannot trust them 100%. Joshua, any final submission? And then I think our time is also approaching. We have to be ending this conversation. I'm sure our participants are enjoying it, and we will be bringing you more of these dialogues as well. And this conversation actually is part 1. We'll also work with Doc to find the appropriate time, and then we'll bring you the part 2, which will be the final version, because he has a lot to share on this for us. So I think we have one hand up, Asamoah. Or Asamoah, your hand is down. Okay. If not, then we'll take the last submission. So Joshua, as you are wrapping up, you add your last submissions as well, and then Doc will do his last submission, then we'll bring the whole discussion to a closure. We must acknowledge we have Sycamore Times with us and Rainbow Radio as well, who are our media partners. Thank you. So Joshua, the floor is yours.
Okay, so let me quickly touch on the subsidy that Ahmed was talking about. That it was from an NGO that farmers pay part, and then the NGO also takes part. Let's not forget that the Planting for Food and Jobs project, as it started in 2017, also had this model that the government was paying 50%, and the farmers were also to pay 50%. But with the 50% of the farmers, they were to pay 25% upfront, and then the 25% after harvest. But the Ministry of Food and Agriculture were not able to recover those loans from the farmers. So considering a policy that will bring back another subsidy that government is to pay 50% and farmers to pay 50%, if they are collecting the 50% upfront, then I think that's going to help. But if it is going to be on loan basis, then I think that's not going to help, because we have seen it before in 2017. Even anything that is that with the subsidy things, look at what happened to the fertilizer. I read the Auditor General report for 2018 that even some of the ministries, the Directorate of Agriculture, they claimed that the fertilizers that were supposed to be for the farmers, they said that people broke into their warehouse and the fertilizers were stolen. So what is the guarantee that when the government brings another subsidy, it is not going to be stolen by the few? And then wrapping up, now let me touch on the Planting for Food and Jobs Policy 2.0. That's the second phase of the Planting for Food and Jobs, which is the
I think
aggregators, which is aggregators going to provide credit inputs to farmers so that they, in return, they buy their farm produce. I must say that this policy is going to bring in March another financial loss to the state, because we won't be able to recover those credit loans from the farmers. You know, some farmers play very smart when it comes to some of these policies. You give them the credit input, they should bring their farm produce for you to get, then they will play smart. They will just take the back door and then go and sell it elsewhere to beat the system. So with the implementation of the Planting for Food and Jobs Policy 2.0, I will recommend that there should be proper stakeholder engagement to look at the loopholes that we got in the Planting for Food and Jobs Policy 1 to get a better policies for the Planting for Food and Jobs Policy 2. Else, when we use it as a political gain, then what happened in the Planting for Food and Jobs one is the same thing that's going to happen in Planting for Food and Jobs Policy 2. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Joshua. I think Ahmed's hand is up. I don't know if you have something to say on Joshua's submission, but
yes, I just want to clarify.
But before that, we are trying to wrap up. I'm
just finishing. It's just a quick one. It's a quick one.
Okay, you chip it in, then I do mine. Then
the discounted 50% I spoke about was free. It wasn't a loan that the farmers will pay back. It's just a merchant grant. It's a market system approach.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So if you have joined on this discussion to this, and I want you to know that Yafo Institute is an independent public policy research organization, a think tank with core aims to promote libertarian ideas and free enterprise research through public policy debate and advocacy for a freer and prosperous society in Ghana. And like I mentioned, we'll be bringing you more of this policy dialogue now that we are in 2024. So that's about Yafo Institute. So we'll move to Doc. Doc, I don't know if I should ask this question so that you consider it as part of your conclusion or concluding remarks. Can we say Planting for Food and Jobs 1.0, since they are trying to relaunch it 2.0, so the old one will be 1.0. Can we call it a failure? Because considering the amount of money that has been spent and the outcomes that we had, can we conclude on it as such? Let me know your thoughts on that one. So thank you.
Okay. So normally what I do and what I think most scholars will do is to look at the thing holistically and not just to conclude with a one-word failure or success. So it is true that the 2018, 2019, we saw some gains with Planting for Food and Jobs. But when we started seeing the gains, people started going political. And when you introduce extreme partisan politics into any policy in this part of the world, it will go down. The later part has been a disaster. I hope that the new minister is able to inject energy to the second phase of the Planting for Food and Jobs. And I urge him to emphasize, as the first contributor, Mr. Rahman stated, to also emphasize on the rearing for food and jobs model. We are always considering the crops and neglecting the animals. The animals have always been referred to as the walking bank of farmers. So when you are having some animals and your son comes from school with school fees payment, you can just walk into your ranch and then catch one animal and sell and then offset the debt. So with my closing remarks, I would like to express my great gratitude to you, Yafo, for bringing this together. It has been an intellectual feast, and we've learned a lot from the contributions that people have done. Initially, I thought it would be a monologue, but I realized that it was more of a dialogue, and I appreciate it. I urge all policymakers to take issues of food security very important. A nation with food insecurity does not have national security. And I repeat, a nation with food insecurity does not have a national security. The national security will be totally down if there is extreme hunger in any nation. The soldiers, the police, the immigration officers, all of them will not even have the basic nutrition needed to go and stand in the face of war. So national security should not only be considered with what we see, the pervasiveness of conflicts and other issues. Food insecurity can cause a revolution in any country. Policymakers must always emphasize on this and see Maslow's theories of needs as the gospel, that without food, you cannot achieve anything in this world. I wish you all the best, and to all contributors and participants, thank you for coming to listen to me and then the other panelists. I think we can forge ahead in future in order to make more concrete submissions. I thank you.
You are muted.
Thank you very much for the remarks and your time as well, Doc and Joshua. It has been a very stimulating conversation, one that is very rare in the Ghanaian society, devoid of political lens and purely intellectual, and that is the Yafo Policy Dialogue Series. So at this juncture, I'll end the live streaming and we'll bring the meeting to an end. I want to thank all participants for joining us. Thank you so much for your time and for being here with us. Your questions and your input made